The 2011 regular Louisiana legislative session wrapped up this week. Aside from the passage of a very lean budget, the legislature did pass some bills which will affect agriculture. For more on this, we turn now to This Week in Louisiana Agriculture's Avery Davidson with this week's in-studio guest. Avery?
Mike, as you mentioned, the 2011 Louisiana legislative session has just wrapped up, and here to tell us all about the bills that will impact you is Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation Legislative Specialist Joe Mapes. Joe, how did this session rank compared to others?
Avery, overall, this session had less business than a typical session. It was a fiscal session, so supposedly we're only supposed to be dealing with bills related to the state's budget. However, we can file 5 bills per 144 legislators non-related to the budget. That being said, we still only had about 1,000 bills filed overall in this session. There's been some talk that it was a session that wasn't as important as some others, that there were items that weren't of substance as far as pieces of legislation. I would beg to differ with that. Anytime you've got legislation that could pass and could affect millions of people's lives and hundreds of industries, it's important to kill that legislation, for example. So it was maybe a more quiet session than some, but a very important session still.
Of course, being a fiscal-only session, the budget would be the big issue. How did agriculture fare, be it the Department of Ag and Forestry or LSU Ag Center? How did they fare in all of this?
And again, theoretically, that's why we come to the Capitol during a fiscal-only session, is to deal with the budget, and we have a constitutional provision that mandates we have a balanced budget by the end of the session, which is, in this case, was June 23rd, 6 p.m. When it's all said and done, we took some one-time revenue and applied it to one-time expenditures, but the governor came out with a balanced budget, which is what he came there to do.
You and I were talking before we started this interview about the hog problem that seems to be sweeping across Louisiana. There were a couple of bills which address that and how farmers and landowners can address that problem.
That's right. Last year a bill was passed which limited the caliber of rifle and shotgun that you could use on quadrupeds in general, but more specifically hogs, which are decimating some of our crops across Louisiana. This year, Major Tebow passed a piece of legislation with our help that allows any high caliber rifle to be used in the taking of quadrupeds and again, more specifically hogs. A separate piece of legislation was passed by Cameron Henry, which allows the use of suppressors on those high caliber rifles. So, you know, when you get up closer to the populated areas, having a higher caliber rifle can be an issue as far as law enforcement hearing those sounds in the middle of the night, for instance. But in this instance, we're able to use suppressors now with the high caliber rifles, and hopefully that's going to help compared to what the law was before. Another
bill which went through that I think was very beneficial to Louisiana farmers is concerning the dig law, dialing 811 and how long those markings are good. Previously, they were only good for 10 days.
Correct. And Jim Monroe, Farm Bureau's assistant to the president, and Scott Wiggers were on a dig law committee that lasted 1 year long that involved utility industries, oil and gas industries, and other agricultural interests like the timber industry. We were able to craft a piece of legislation that redefined the farmer as an agricultural excavator and makes those lines on the ground that Dottie comes out and marks good for 30 days as opposed to 10 days. And we all know that you can't always get your projects done, right on time. 10 days is a short period, and if you got to call them back out, it's another fee that you got to pay. So this is a big victory for a lot of different industries, especially agricultures.
Okay, quickly, because we're running out of time, what are your predictions for the 2012 legislative session in Louisiana?
2012 is going to be a tough year. I mean, as we were discussing earlier, we had to come up with one-time sources of revenue for one-time expenditures. I think there'll be some of that done next year as well, and there's always one-time revenue out there, but we can't guarantee it and rely on it. We may be looking at some more austere measures next year as far as possible fee increases and tax increases, but we'll be fighting to keep those as low as possible in their effect to agriculture.
Yeah, no one likes new taxes. Thanks a lot, Joe Mapes. He is the legislative specialist for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. So, Mike, we have a balanced budget this year. The question is, what are they going to do to balance the budget next year? Back to you.
Thanks, Avery.